In this video, we will discuss the history and development of several aspects of the space program. We will begin by discussing the shuttle program, then we will move on to EVAs, and finally discuss simulators used for training. After the end of the Apollo program in 1972, NASA and the United States government were ready to seriously expand their operations in space. To do this, they would need a reliable means of transport. The Space Shuttle program was conceived in 1972 as a way to bring astronauts and cargo to space in a reusable craft. The first iteration of the Space Shuttle was Enterprise, a high-altitude glider that had to be launched from a modified Boeing 747. Enterprise was used to test the shuttle design's gliding capabilities. The shuttles would have to glide back to Earth, so this was vitally important. Between 1972 and 2011, NASA built and used 5 different shuttles in space: Columbia, Challenger, Discovery, Atlantis, and Endeavour. The shuttles played a major role in the construction and upkeep of both the International Space Station and the Hubble telescope until 2011, when the program was discontinued. Atlantis and the crew of STS-135 landed for the final time on July 21, 2011. Each shuttle typically carried 7 astronauts and up to 24,000 pounds of cargo. The shuttles resembled airplanes with swept-back wings and standard flight control surfaces. The shuttles also featured a high-tech heat shielding system that used hundreds of insulating ceramic tiles on the nose and front fuselage, which could protect the shuttle's delicate electronics from the high heat of re-entry. Although the teams of scientists and engineers worked hard to make the space shuttles as safe as possible, they were not always successful. 2 of NASA's 5 shuttles suffered catastrophic failures, leading to the deaths of 14 astronauts, the loss of cargo, and millions of dollars spent on the missions wasted. In 1986, Challenger disintegrated just 73 seconds after liftoff, killing everyone aboard. Shuttle Endeavour was built to replace Challenger and was made from spare parts meant for the other shuttles. In 2003, Columbia was re-entering Earth's atmosphere when a piece of foam separated from the fuel tank and struck the wing of the shuttle, destroying it and causing the shuttle to disintegrate, yet again killing everyone on board. The 2 shuttle disasters, increases in the cost of space exploration, and declining interest in space among voters eventually brought about the shuttle program's discontinuation in 2011. The shuttles were absolutely vital to the construction of the International Space Station. For smaller, more delicate tasks, however, an astronaut is required to personally work on space stations and satellites. An extravehicular activity, or EVA, allows an astronaut to do this.
The very first extravehicular activity was performed by a Soviet cosmonaut named Alexei Leonov in 1965. He was outside of the spacecraft for 20 minutes. Alexei was unable to move easily and found it difficult to use his tether for movement. His suit also overpressurized during his time in space, and he was unable to re-enter the spacecraft without bleeding the oxygen in his suit to dangerous levels. This spacewalk was a success, but was riddled with dangerous problems that needed to be fixed before the Soviets were able to attempt another spacewalk. The Americans were much more successful with their spacewalk 3 months later. Ed White performed this spacewalk with a 25-foot umbilical supplying his oxygen. He also found challenges moving after the fuel ran out in his handheld gun and he was forced to use the tether. Years later, in 1969, Apollo 11 landed on the moon, and Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin went on the first lunar spacewalk. This spacewalk was an untethered EVA with a portable life support system lasting 2 hours and 31 minutes, the longest spacewalk of its time. The spacewalks dating later than 1999 have been mostly to build, make repairs, and attach improvements on the International Space Station. There have been many EVA milestones since then, such as the first Canadian EVA, but no recent spacewalks have deviated from the ISS. EVAs have evolved over the years, mostly due to the improvements of spacesuit technology, allowing for more extravehicular opportunities. Early NASA spacesuits began with the Mercury suits, but the first suit that was eligible for spacewalking was the Gemini G4C suit, which Ed White wore on his spacewalk. The suit was composed with 21 layers, and unlike the suits after it, used an umbilical to provide most of the life-supporting aspects of the suit. The suit was the best of its time because of the combination of a pressure bladder and a link net restraint, allowing movement while the suit was pressurized. Although movement was allowed, the main concerns with this suit were the lack of mobility and the inability to venture farther than the umbilical allowed. Spacesuits nowadays have improved on these weaknesses and are better equipped for the void of space. Astronauts are now much more mobile and can carry around their life support systems thanks to more efficient use of space and improved technology. The largest improvements to spacesuits have been made to thermal control and oxygen tanks, together allowing for astronauts to last longer than 8 hours in space. The evolution of the spacesuit has allowed for many uses of EVAs and has allowed for spacewalks to be held with less preparation and more challenging circumstances. Spacewalks are used for standard development, repairs, satellite tethering, and crew transfer. The ability to perform these tasks without automation has led to revolutions in scientific discovery and has allowed for men to walk on the moon or build a station in space, ideas that were unthinkable before Leonov left his capsule in 1965.
We now know how EVAs work, but how do astronauts prepare for a spacewalk? To do that, they use simulators. Simulators have been key to astronaut training throughout history. To understand how the technology of simulators has developed, we must start by looking at what they looked like in the past. Historically, NASA has heavily utilized simulators to train astronauts. Initially, these simulations were primarily used to teach astronauts equipment and systems that they will need to understand for space travel. Technologically, these simulators were advanced for their time. They mainly consisted of a series of consoles and screens to simulate and allow for user input. While the simulators were not advanced, they were able to simulate the majority of tasks. Early simulators were adopted to different extents by different space organizations. During the Mir period of cooperation with the Russian Space Agency, NASA heavily relied on the simulators to test responses to spaceflight situations. However, the Russian astronauts did not use the simulators as heavily. Early simulators were crucial for preparing for the adversity that is present in space, and they created a strong base for the simulations we have today. Nowadays, the simulation software used by astronauts is much more advanced. Modern simulators consist of full touchscreen interfaces that create a more immersive situation. The computers running these simulators can also be used for several types of simulations just by switching out the software running. This increases the number of situations that can be simulated, as software can be swapped so an entirely new simulator does not need to be built. Virtual reality is another technology that is used to create more realistic simulations. Through virtual reality, astronauts get an idea of the actual movements they will need for activities such as spacewalks. By simulating real movements, astronauts get a better idea of what the activities they will have to perform in space are like. Simulators exist for many aspects of space travel, from EVAs to small tasks like drilling. These simulators are crucial as astronauts need to be prepared for every situation in space, since every move can be the difference between life and death. Simulations also provide an opportunity to practice the communication and teamwork astronauts will need. As space teams are small, teamwork is incredibly important. The teamwork developed in the simulators plays a large role in the success of the mission. Simulation is key to space travel, and the technology behind it will continue to develop and support astronauts. Overall, the space program has developed in several aspects throughout history, and the continued development of the program will allow humanity to reach new heights.